I remember when we first started, we were so excited to build our very first product that we jumped straight into the code. But now, after having built 100 different startups and having worked with over 200 investors, we have certainly seen what it actually takes to build an investable and a scalable platform and a business. And so we've realized that there are so many things that you can actually do before the very first line of code in order to ensure that you are on the best possible track and journey in order to build and scale that billion-dollar business that I think most founders end up wanting to build. And so our course of concept validation and the services we provide during that is about getting you from concept through to understanding desirability, feasibility, viability, and really making sure that you're ticking off those boxes in terms of what actually makes this an investable idea for you to invest in it yourself, your time, your team, or to bring on external funders. And so today I'm going to be giving a bit of a high-level overview into the top line things we do during concept validation. So once people have identified a problem, more often than not, they want to jump straight into ideating a solution. But there's actually a framework that's relatively easy to follow to figure out what that solution should be about. And one of the easiest ways to figure out the solution is to actually look at the market. So when we look at the market, we look at three different things. We look at how big is the total addressable market. So if you look across the whole world, how much value would this problem actually be? Then, if we take that problem and we have to break it down into its current market share, maybe there's a big US company that owns 20% of the market, maybe there's a European one that owns 15%, and then the rest of the market share is divided equally. Now, that 20% of the market share that's taken by one competitor probably gives you a bit of an indication in terms of the biggest that you will possibly get over the next 10 years. And so that sort of sets you a goal of how big this opportunity is for you. But most investors realize at this point in time, trying to capture 100% of your total market is an impossible task. So then the next thing we do with founders is we look at what is the best market to service over the next 18 to 36 months, and how can we hold ourselves accountable to ensuring that we're actually capturing that market. Once we sort of know who we're going after, we can almost ensure that our go-to-market strategy is then actually capturing that most valuable market. And that's one of the other phases that we do during concept validation. So once you understand what problem you're solving, and now you know which market you're going after, a challenge that many entrepreneurs face is, how do I price myself? This is such an early solution where a lot of the future features are still coming. So, do I charge the same rate as competitors? Do I make people pay up front? Do I give them a trial period? Are they comfortable actually using a system that might be a little bit buggy? Well, these are things that every entrepreneur needs to ask themselves, and some have answers that are better than others. One of the things that we do is we look at what are the future and the current possible monetization strategies that can be employed for the solution that you're going after. And again, the way in which you onboard your first set of customers should very much define how you monetize them. It might be an advertising play, it might be a subscription model, it might be pay per use. Whatever's going to make the most sense for the next 18 to 36 months is the only thing you need to focus on now. And once you've built a business big enough, then you can start to think about what are those potential other monetization strategies or additional revenue streams that will come later down the line. So once we've figured out how we're essentially going to charge customers, we start to get an idea of what that first solution might look like. But often a solution is driven by the access that the founding team has to either the technical talent required to build it, the investors required to fund the solution, or the distribution network required to actually sell this thing and roll it out. And so one of the things that we do that most companies don't do is we do a founders market fit analysis, where we're basically trying to imagine what this business will look like once you raise your first round of capital, once it starts to scale, and then what it's going to take in order to actually make a return on that initial investment. Is this an acquisition? Is this an IPO? And while that stuff is very theoretical in the early phases, running through the exercise of planning out the future business really helps to identify what are the advantages and the disadvantages of this founding team. Now, most entrepreneurs we work with operate under this false assumption that they need to really sell themselves to the investors, because if the investors see any flaw in their team, they won't invest. In reality, investors know that there is a 0% chance that you have built the entire team needed in order to build a billion-dollar company, and that it really relies on your ability as a founder to identify what are the key roles that are going to make this business a success, and how can you go out and actually find the individuals that will step into those roles, and then how do you incentivize them, motivate them, keep them accountable. One of the things that we do during our concept validation phase is essentially help you plan out the ideal starting team, and then just highlight top level roles that we think are going to be required as the business starts to scale. That again will inform what our initial solution actually looks like. So one of the things that we advise on, and I know most founders actually hate doing, is a like competitor analysis. So understanding how the market share is spread. You're going to have some competitors that are charging in the upper price limits. You're going to have some competitors that are charging in the lower price limits. And you're also going to have a competitor that is not digital, but might be pen and paper, or just some resistance to the solution that you are ideating. When we look at a competitor analysis, we basically use it to inform ourselves of what are the key features that are going to be required, again, how we might price this thing, what competitors have actually raised in the past, what is the potential future value of this business, and how quickly might that value scale. We also look at what are the key roles that we might want to learn about, and potentially even interview from our competitors. And so all of that information starts to act as a bit more of a roadmap in terms of month on month, what are those key features that are going to be developed and released, and when are we going to start gathering feedback on how the market is sort of adopting the solution that we are building. So once we've done a competitor analysis and we have started to plan out what are the sort of key features that are going to make this thing really usable, that are going to drive people to actually try the app and recommend it to a friend, we then start to think about what are the ways that we can activate different users. Everyone's heard about, digital media and the fact that you can pay Google or Facebook or Instagram or even LinkedIn to acquire users. But in reality, it's an incredibly expensive customer acquisition channel. And so often the early entrepreneurs are thinking about the best ways in which they can drive customers to trial their platform. They do it in a personal and intimate way so that they can really start to survey and just learn a little bit more about who their customers actually are, what they love about the solution. But one of the challenges that we find is that most entrepreneurs don't understand performance marketing and how to actually start to measure where is the best return on effort, capital, time when it comes to trialing a different customer acquisition channel, and then also learning what is the lifetime value of each customer. Now, I know experienced founders are probably going to understand a lot of the terminology, but for most first-time founders, even just hearing the terminology, it's incredibly confusing. You don't understand why it's necessary. So one of the things that we do during concept validation is we teach founders the importance of a well-defined go-to-market strategy with a lot of the risks and the assumptions written out, that you can start to design experiments around and really prove, even before you've written your first line of code, prove what it takes to actually roll out the solution. So after we have essentially looked into what the go-to-market strategy is and some of the risks and the assumptions, we then work with the founders on defining out what is that sort of quarterly game plan and the sort of key metrics that are going to determine whether or not the team is successful or isn't. Are you hitting deadline? Are you hitting target? And we use that as a way of ensuring that founders, that our team, that their team is all on the same page about what needs to happen, why decisions have changed or why decisions have been made, and how it affects the business. And then once we have done everything from defining the problem, the size of the market, the possible monetization strategies, the founding team, the competitors, the go-to-market, we package all of it into a way where founders have essentially built themselves the perfect pitch deck that can be used to go out and find somebody who's willing to pay for the solution, whether that is a client that is pre-signing up, whether that's a future partner, whether that's government, whether that's an investor or an angel, who just wants to put some money behind you as the entrepreneur. And after that, we still offer 12 months of support where our product team is working with you month on month to figure out what are your biggest challenges and how can we open up our network of clients, our network of investors, our network of developers, to really ensure that we're helping you build and scale the best possible business. And so it's really a holistic solution. It helps you get from a novice understanding of how to build a startup through to really in-depth understanding of what it's going to take to scale this thing, how to hold yourself, your team accountable. And then you get the extension of our team, our connections, our network, and all of the learnings that we have learned over the 100 startups that we've worked with. So reach out.